Week 8 of the NFL fantasy football season. I am joined today. Well, I personally am Kent Wyrock. You can find me on Twitter at CCMP_Kent. I am joined by Kevin Steele, who is at Fantasy Wrath. What's the number at the end there?
13.
Fantasy Wrath 13 for Kevin. And then I also am joined by Kai, and you can find him on Twitter at Kai Squared. And we will be talking about all of the fantasy stuff that is going on today. Of course, this morning, if you were able to wake up early enough after your possible Halloween parties last night, you'll see that there's football on. The Vikings are currently ahead against the Cleveland Browns 23-16 in the third quarter. So there's football on right now, folks. So if you're not watching us, you could be watching that. But we're going to go over some interesting things going on in the league this week, talk about some matchups, injury possibilities, and updates going along with that. Guys, what do you think? Do we have any interesting games going on this week that you are excited to watch? Or do you have any thoughts about this early morning London game?
It's just going to be fantastic if the Browns beat your Vikings. Can we talk about that first?
We're not going to talk about that because that's not going to happen. The Vikings will win, and if they don't, then I think I said it earlier, I will quit football. I'm never going to watch again because the Browns deserve to go unvictorious this season the way they have been playing.
I'll second that. As someone whose favorite team already beat the Browns, I will second that they definitely deserve to go 0-6.
Yeah, Kai's trying to use the Browns as like a indirect way of trashing the Vikings versus the Colts. So we're starting off on a good foot here.
It's a neutral field. The Colts did get them at home, so I suppose that factors in a tad. And the Colts did only escape with a 3-point win after being up, I think, by 20 points at one point. They still almost blew it.
Very true, very true. All right, well, we're going to go over a few things here, maybe talk about some injury updates, active players, inactive players, stuff like that. But while we are doing that, start getting your fantasy questions into our YouTube chat. And once we get a couple of those in, we can start answering them and talking about your matchup possibilities for this week, and make sure you get out there and win. So let's go over some injuries. I know that we have not really a whole lot in terms of major injuries. All the big guys seem to be playing this week. We do have a couple of guys that have been declared active so far that I thought were pretty interesting. We will have Danny Amendola on the field for the Patriots today. It looks like Golden Tate will be playing later tonight. That has not been officially confirmed as active, but I believe it is something we can expect. Let's see. Is there anything else of interest out there that you guys have been keeping an eye on?
It doesn't seem like there's going to be any really major injuries, or at least major guys missing this week. So at least from the list that we thought, going in, like Golden Tate sounds like he could play. And so
I think we're still waiting on Emmanuel Sanders as well. As last I heard, it did not seem like he was going to be playing, but we are still waiting to find out for sure. So that game will, of course, be on tomorrow night, so keep an eye out for that. You don't want to have an inactive player on your starting roster after everyone has played today, so just be wary of that and make sure you don't leave him there as a last option if he does sit that game. So all right, well, anyway, let's take a look at some of the matchups we have here today. There are a few interesting ones. Last week I felt like was kind of just a cluster of games, and there's a lot of messy ones, but there seems to be some good ones here this week. One that I'm going to look for in terms of fantasy production is going to be this Chargers-Patriots game. There's been a lot of buzz on Twitter talking about start every single Chargers player you own, and unless you're Kevin, and then you will never, ever, ever play Mike Williams because you will never own him because Kevin is a certified hater of Mike Williams, even though they have now traded Dontrell Inman to the Bears. So they clearly have some confidence in him, and they're going to try and get him some reps here today, and we'll see what he can do with it. But guys, any other matchups that you want to talk about here today?
Well, as far as for that one, I mean, they do have confidence in Mike Williams, but it's just more confidence than Dontrell Inman and a 7th-round pick. So that's not a ringing endorsement of Mike Williams by any means. But yeah, that matchup is a pretty juicy one. Melvin Gordon is going to play through the injury that he's had. So for people wanting to start Austin Eckler this week, you might have to wait a little bit longer. He still might be worth a flex play just because how he's been used in the passing game, and they might want to limit Gordon depending on how this game goes and how his injury goes. But Tyrell Williams could have his second good game of the season, perhaps, against the Patriots today. You like Keenan Allen in this game a lot. And then on the other side, the Patriots guys, you can probably fire them up too. Outside of Mike Gillislee, Dion Lewis has continued to see the most touches in that backfield, but James White has been the most involved in the passing game. So in PPR leagues, you might lean White, although Lewis is getting the most carries there. And then Brandon Cooks and Chris Hogan continue to kind of alternate good games. Sometimes they'll both have a good game in the same week. And then Danny Amendola, like Kent said, is going to play this week. So he might be worth starting as well. Lots of good players you could start in this week. I'm pretty sure this game has a high over-under as well. I can't remember exactly what it was off the top of my head, but those Patriots games seem to have high over-unders just because that defense still hasn't got its act together. And it's banged up at all 3 levels today as well. So try to start some guys in that game if you can.
Yeah, that Patriots defense is missing some key components, and I didn't even really want to call them key because the defense in general has been not operating very well. They haven't been able to stop pretty much anything in terms of running or passing. So, yeah, definitely get your Chargers out there today if you have them. Is pretty obvious for most people. I mean, Rivers is a start. Keenan is a start. Melvin Gordon is a start. And Austin Eckler, I've been touting this guy for quite a while now, and I really like his skill set. I think they're starting to realize that he's good, and they're getting him getting him touches, even though, of course, Melvin Gordon will be the lead back there. But one thing I do want to say about the Patriots backfield is that, yes, it does seem like Dion Lewis time is here, but I feel like Bill Belichick is going to just pull one of his old dirty tricks, and Rex Burkhead will probably get the most touches today, just kind of to mess with everyone because that's what Bill Belichick does. So anyway, there are a few other games that I find personally interesting. I think that first things first, there's going to be some weather issues for this week. So if you haven't had an eye on that yet, let's talk about that because this Carolina Panthers and Tampa Bay Buccaneers game, I believe, is going to be a little bit sloppy, as well as the 49ers and Eagles game is also going to have some rain. So if you do have, I would say the main ones is kickers. I would suggest maybe switching them out for a substitute, especially if it is someone that you are not really committed to. Because it is a kicker and they don't matter that much. They're not even real people, I've heard from some folks. So definitely get out of them. Also, wide receivers tend to take a little bit of a hit in the rain and high wind situations as well, which this Panthers-Buccaneers game is supposed to have about 20-mile-per-hour winds with gusts reaching 25. So that could get pretty messy. I expect a lot of ground game between the Panthers and the Buccaneers. I think Doug Martin's going to be a great start. I think Christian McCaffrey will still be a fine start. He's getting peppered with targets, and they're short, so they're not as tricky to catch in that rain, and that wind's not going to affect short passes quite as much. But I do look forward to that game. It's always interesting to see what Cam Newton will be showing up on the field this week. He seems to either throw 3 touchdowns or 3 interceptions, and there's really no in between. So, yeah, do you guys have any thoughts on that game at all? Players that you like or don't like there with the weather going on and all that?
Well, actually, we do have a question that it pertains to that game, so I figured maybe why not fit that in there.
Excellent.
With that, so need a wide receiver flex, and running back. Okay, looks like he's got Marlon Mack, Jonathan Stewart, and then he running back, and then he has Marvin Jones, Cole Beasley, Travis Benjamin, and Emmanuel Sanders. So it looks like it's either Mack or Jonathan Stewart. And then all the rest for, wide receiver and then a flex.
All right. Well, let's go one by one here. So let's talk about the running backs. Mack versus Stewart. Stewart might actually get an uptick in work if the rain and weather there is truly bad. So that I think Mack. I don't know. That's kind of a toss-up for me because Jonathan Stewart could very easily get like 20 yards, and that would be all that he does today. So that Bengals defense, though, is stout for Mack. So I don't know if his upside is really that spectacular today either. If I had to pick one right now, I think I'd go with probably Stewart, but it's pretty close for me.
For what it's worth, the Buccaneers over the last 3 weeks, 120 rushing yards to running backs, 148 and 108. So it's not like they've been good against the run by any means. Jonathan Stewart's yards per carry has been quite poor this season, but I would lean him over Mack just a little bit. I don't have a lot of faith in the Colts today. The only reason I'm wearing a Colts jersey is because Dwight Freeney got signed by the Seahawks this week. That's literally the only thing Colts fans have to hang their hat on this week, and it's not even there on their team. So I think they're getting Marlon Mack more involved. He actually out-snapped Frank Gore for the first time last week. So I kind of like Mack a little bit, but with Stewart, I think there's a safe floor there. Hopefully he falls into the end zone for you. But with Stewart, you see this same 40 to 60 yards a week. No matter what, they'll just feed him the ball regardless of whether he's playing well. And I think this game will be close. I don't think that the Panthers will be behind for the whole game for any reason and have to lean on the passing game. So I think Stewart's still going to see a safe floor touches regardless of whether he does well with them or not.
So you guys are going Stewart?
Yeah. I'm going Stewart.
You never Jonathan Stewart, right? The dude has 15 standard league, 15 fantasy points over his last 4 weeks on 53 carries, which is the 13th most in the league. Do you know how inefficient that is?
Awful.
That is absolutely atrocious.
Yeah, the Eagles ate him up pretty bad.
Jonathan Stewart should be dropped. He shouldn't even be on your roster at this point. So yeah, it's 100% Marlon Mack, and it's not even like not even close to me.
You know what, Kev? You've convinced me. I like the game script says Marlon Mack more. I think this is not the week that he goes bananas, just because the Colts are terrible. I don't think anyone can go bananas at this point. But yeah, I think Jonathan Stewart's just so bad every time he touches the ball. I don't like starting bad players.
Hey, I'll admit that Jonathan Stewart is not a star by any stretch of the imagination. He might have been kind of close at one point, but not really. But I will have you know that in 5 out of the 7 games so far, he's at least 40 yards. So I know that's not outstanding, but that's a floor. That is a floor. And, sometimes if it's your running back too, you just need a guy there who can put up 5-6 points, just something that's not a goose egg. And even though I know that Marlon Mack is a talented player, it's possible that they just go with Gore this game. I don't expect them to. I mean, what if they did use Gore for the majority of the carries, and then Marlon Mack just doesn't have an opportunity to get going in the passing game? It could happen. I don't know how likely it is, but I'm standing my ground on Stewart, though. We got to have one person here.
But you can enjoy your resolve. Can't But
you can enjoy that 3.75 fantasy points per week that Jonathan Stewart's going to get you.
I will.
Players like Jonathan Stewart are why teams miss the playoffs or go 6-7 or get bounced in the first round. These players that you're just waiting and waiting and waiting for something better to happen, but they're not doing so bad that you feel like dropping them. Like these players kill rosters.
They're called roster cloggers.
Yeah, I can't. I can't. I dropped Jonathan Stewart in last week in a league and 2 weeks ago in a league. I can't.
That's because you're playing fantasy football the right way.
I'm done, Kev.
Well, look,
I'm done.
all I know is some people have rosters that are dealing with injuries, that have bye weeks. Maybe you need a guy that can put in some points. And Jonathan Stewart can be owned.
He does. He has it. Marlon Mack. We've been saying to pick up for weeks now on this show, on many podcasts, all over TFA. This kid.
I just think Stewart will have a decent game today. That's all I think, really.
Wishful thinking. All right, so so there we do have the other part of the question too that we didn't answer. And then so we got the running back out of the way. So he needs a wide receiver and a flex between the same guys. Well, whichever one you decide not to go with, which come on, let's go to Marvin Mack. Marvin Jones, Cole Beasley, Travis Benjamin, and Emmanuel Sanders. Which obviously we don't know if Emmanuel Sanders is going to play tomorrow or not.
Right. For me, just because of the injury concern with Sanders, I think you have to start somebody today, and I would just start both those running backs. Because I don't like Travis Benjamin. He could get a goose egg any week. It's Patriots wheels up week, but
did you pick a wide receiver? He has to have a wide receiver.
Oh, he has to have a wide receiver.
Yeah, okay. It's a wide receiver, flex, and running back.
Well, he's got to start 3. Okay. Oh man.
Well, here I'll jump in because I got some.
Yeah, I got to think about that a little.
So I personally, Travis Benjamin is in. Like I was saying earlier, start Chargers today against Patriots. He might have one catch for 60 yards and a touchdown, but that's all you need, and that's what he's known for. So you're shooting for that. Cole Beasley this year hasn't been that attractive to me as a fantasy asset, but Marvin Jones going against a tough Pittsburgh defense, I still actually do like him this week. I think he's going to get a lot of targets because Golden Tate, even if he's expected to play, so if he does become active and play, I don't see him being used in his full capacity. I believe he had an ankle injury, so he's definitely going to be taking it easy, making sure he's coming back strong. I still think that Marvin Jones is in line for upwards of 10 plus targets today. So even though they are going to be strong against the pass there in Pittsburgh, I think that there's a case to be made for Marvin Jones to have a decent outing. And like you said about Emmanuel Sanders, I don't think you can sit any of these guys and just hope that he plays, because if he doesn't play, it's obviously not going to be worth it. But I think right now I would say Marvin Jones and Travis Benjamin for the wide receiver and the flex.
It's definitely Marvin Jones. And then what I would do is I would look to see if Benny Fowler's available so I can start Emmanuel Sanders in the event he plays. Because if he plays, you want him over all of these guys, and it's not even particularly close. So I would see if a guy like Benny Fowler or even Sunshine Taylor, maybe he's out there and pick him up,
Yeah, I would actually probably drop Cole Beasley for either of those guys just to roll the dice for this week, and then
we got our one bad player of the week that Kev says to pick up and start. So we've got that checked off the list, and Jordan Taylor.
We would not drop Cole Beasley. You would not drop Cole Beasley. You would drop Travis Benjamin. It's a PPR league, so you don't want to drop the guy who only sees 3 targets a game and you're hoping for a long touchdown.
That's Cole Beasley you're talking about, only 3 targets a game. Cole Beasley has not had more than 4 catches in a single game this year, has not had more than 33 yards in a single game this year.
I think Kevin's stuck in 2016 here.
No,
but this offense could completely change if Elliott gets suspended.
Yes, that's where I was going with this.
So yeah, for me, I would. What I would do today is I would drop Travis Benjamin today, leave that spot empty for tomorrow night, and then pick up maybe Benny Fowler, maybe if Demarcus Robinson is on the waivers, if Benny Fowler's already been picked up. That would be worth it to me just to wait and see on Sanders. You hope Sanders plays, but if not, I think there are probably some Chiefs and Broncos on your waiver that are worth starting, at least over
Anthony Thomas.
D'Anthony Thomas, maybe. Yeah, I think there's a couple of guys that at least I feel as good about as these guys. So yeah, I think for sure Marvin Jones, and then Mac over Stewart, and then I would drop Benjamin and see what happens tomorrow.
That's awesome. So we just gave like a 30-minute response on one question. That's the way to do it right there. Optimal. We're optimizing our time.
Tricky question.
A lot of discussion required. All right, well, let's we kind of got that one all taken care of. So let's move on to this other question that Jim has for us. So it looks like we're talking about now a different team for him. So it's a 14-team league. There's no running backs to pick from. He had McKinnon and Kareem Hunt. So he needs to start a third running back. Oh, is he talking about the same question? Oh, yeah. Never mind. I thought that was a full nother question.
He did mention that you get return yards. So that.
Oh, okay. That does help Benjamin's cause. Okay. Well, yeah, there. See, I knew that the whole time. Definitely. Absolutely. And I'm not lying either. So, all right. Well, get those questions in, guys. If you're watching right now, we can absolutely answer any questions that you have. Jim, if you've got more questions for us too, throw them out there. We'd like to have something to talk about. I'm going to take a quick peek at this Vikings game, give an update. It looks like we have a 30-16 game with 8 minutes and 40 seconds left. So, guys, I don't think I'm going to be quitting football today. We had a touchdown from Kyle Rudolph. So if you own him, you're happy about that.
Start tight ends against the Browns every week. It does not fail. And they've been missing Jabril Peppers for 2 weeks now, who's been covering tight ends a lot for them. So what is a weakness has been worse over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, starting tight ends against the Browns is an effective strategy. Currently, Rudolph has 6 receptions for 27 yards and a touchdown. Pulling his best Austin Seferian-Jenkins impersonation here. Those short routes are keeping the reception numbers high, but his yardage total is still fairly low. But looking forward to the Vikes sealing up that win as a Vikings fan myself. But let's see. Is there any other games that we want to talk about that you find interesting for this week, or any situations that you really want to bring up, guys?
Well, it's Bengals week. It's Bengals onslaught week is what it is. I've been so excited for all the Bengals this week. Andy Dalton, the Red Rocket, is going to smash the Colts, and it's going to be glorious. And so A.J. Green's in play. Joe Mixon's in play. I even think a little John Ross love is in store for this week, who should be back because the Colts are a dumpster fire.
I mean, maybe not a dumpster fire, maybe like a garbage bin fire, like one of those big bins they keep next to the buildings. Set one of that on fire, but not like a whole dumpster. But yeah, it's bad. AJ Green's gonna smash this week. Vontae Davis cannot contain AJ Green at his age. And then Brandon LaFell I like a lot this week. He was heavily involved last week against the Steelers. I'm not ready to start John Ross yet, but I would not be surprised if this is the game that he gets going. And then Joe Mixon I like a lot. Giovanni Bernard I don't like very much this week, just because I don't think the game script is gonna put him on the field very much. Joe Mixon is getting consistently more involved week after week, regardless of whether it's showing in the box score. He's still getting more involved, getting more snaps every week. And then Andy Dalton I like as probably a QB1 this week, as weird and gross as that is to say.
I don't think that's gross at all. I've picked him up.
For me, that's gross.
There is nothing gross about that.
Against the Colts, yeah, you start as many players as you can against the Colts. It's one of those defenses. It's terrible. It's losing players to IR week after week. And as a fan, it's sad to watch. But it's all about the draft pick now for the Colts. The only Colt I would think about starting is maybe Marlon Mack, like we've talked about, and then T.Y. Hilton. I do think catches a deep pass on the Bengals this week. They consistently get beat over the top, usually by a third wide receiver, but the Colts don't really have a third wide receiver, so I think T.Y. Hilton can do that this week. And that's about it. It looks very bleak for the Colts for this season going forward. If you can get anything for your Colts, I think you should sell. You should have sold them a while back.
For your Colts, the one Colt.
Well, the one Colt. Once the next time Marlon Mack has a big game, I think you should try to sell him too.
No,
the scoring for this team is not a happy outlook. The amount of touchdowns the entire team will get is looking worse and worse. This offense looks worse and worse as people get more and more tape on Brissett in this offense. But you said you disagree, Kent. Why do you disagree?
Here's why I disagree. Because, first of all, the Colts are obviously not going to make the playoffs. This is a team that is in a transition of running backs. Now, Frank Gore's been on the team only for a few years, but he's definitely been their guy, their go-to guy. They have a rookie here that has shown promise. He's shown talent. And going out of this season, they're going to need to see what they have in him in terms of using him as a three-down back. I think he's capable of being a three-down back. He's great between the tackles. He has good pass-catching chops. He's a very talented kid. So the Colts are going to stop using Gore because, frankly, I don't think he's still chasing any records right now. I think he's just padding stats. I need to confirm that because he is up there on the all-time list for rushing yards. So I don't know if he's still chasing anything, but I don't believe he is. So there's really no reason for the Colts to continue using him if they're not playoff bound. I think they got to see what's going on with Mac, and they already have shown that they like him. So he's going to get more and more opportunities towards the end of this season. He's young. They can, get him out there if he does get injured by chance, that he's more likely to bounce back. Frank Gore, they're going to let him pass peacefully off into the sunset. He'll walk off and wave to the crowd, and it'll be very, very ceremonial, but they don't want to run him into the ground. They have no need to. So I like Marlon Mack for the rest of the season. And I think even though the Colts are not going to be winning games, he still has the pass catching ability where you can be used in that negative game script. So still like him for the rest of the year.
Well, I agree with everything you said, Kent, but I would still trust him. I do think
that's fine.
And limit Gore as the season goes on because they would like to have him next year. With hopefully Luck back next year, they'd like to keep Gore in the offense. But yeah, I do think Mac will get more and more involved and eventually lead this team in touches and carries and snaps and all that goodness. But I do think that it's still, once he gets that full workload, just because of how bad this offense is, I think it's still going to be like flex running back 3 value.
Well, maybe you can find a guy like me in your league, and I will. I'll pay him. Actually, do you own him in our league? Maybe I should go over there and start looking.
I own him in A league. I don't know if it's that one.
All right, we do have another question from Jim. Actually, he's got a quarterback question for us. So he is thinking about starting Big Ben Roethlisberger or Russell Wilson. Guys, I know my answer, but I'll let maybe one of you two start this one off and tell me which quarterback you like more this week.
For me, it's Russell Wilson, and it's not all that close. This is one of the games that I really am intrigued to see how it turns out. The Texans defense has sneakily looked worse over the last couple of weeks since they've lost J.J. Watt and Whitney Merciless. They had a bye and a Browns matchup to sort of hide that. But this defense is now vulnerable. They are still banged up in the secondary. Russell Wilson had his best or best or second best. He had a great game against the Titans this year as well, but one of his best games of the year last week against the Giants. I think this offense is finally healthy, which you like. All the wide receivers, all the running backs, and the running game has not looked good for any particular back, but as a whole, I think it's allowing Russell Wilson to open up that offense and do some good things. They're involving Rawls and Lacey and Prosise before he got hurt again, and McKissick all in this offense. So I don't know that you can start any of those guys. But I think for Wilson, it does help this offense a little bit. The offensive line, every week that they play, they're improving just a little bit from hot garbage to maybe like wet hot garbage. So it's getting slightly better. And this Texans defense, I don't know that it's a top 10 defense anymore. Just the way they played against the Browns, and with these injuries, the way they played against the Chiefs as well. I don't think this defense is scary at all anymore. On the other side, Roethlisberger, he's been very unpredictable, up and down. The home road thing hasn't quite held up to expectations, so you're not sure if that's going to help you or hurt you this week. I forget. They're in Detroit, right? Yeah, they're in Detroit. So traditionally, that's bad. But this week he's had some good games on the road. He's had some bad games on the road, good games at home, bad games at home. So Roethlisberger is a very volatile play to me. This Lions defense has also had its good weeks. So and with all the drama with Martavis Bryant and all the nonsense that this offense is dealing with, I think Russell Wilson is just a great play for me this week. And I don't think I'm ready to start Roethlisberger over him.
Yeah, 100% agree. I also have Russell Wilson, and it's not even close. Roethlisberger this year has been mediocre at best, and this is something I've been beating the drum for now for a while, and most people already know about it, but second half Russell Wilson is coming. Every year in the second half, he is stronger. He throws lots of touchdowns. He starts connecting with his receivers. He figures out a way to run and snake his way around his terrible offensive line until he can chuck a 60-yard bomb. He gets it done. He's a very creative quarterback, and once he gets into the flow of things, the waterfall of touchdowns just starts coming. So I love Russell Wilson this week. I think that his matchup is going to be a good one for him. The Texans defense currently is actually allowing a decent amount of points to the quarterback position. It's about 16.7 a game, but I would say that Russell Wilson will lean more towards the 20-plus range in this matchup. The Texans have lost a few key defensive pieces that have really kind of affected their defensive strategies. So I think that he's going to be fine, and he's going to be able to get some wiggle room, and he's going to be connecting with some passes. I also like Doug Baldwin in this game. I think he will be fine. I know we're just talking about the quarterbacks, but just thought I'd throw that out there. So I take Russell Wilson, and I don't want to touch Roethlisberger for the rest of the season if I can help it. Honestly, I'm out on him.
You're out on Big Ben, you said, for the rest of the season?
I think so, unless the matchup is pristine.
Oh my God. Their schedule is amazing in the second half of the season. I love their schedule.
I'd have to take a look.
So I think better days are ahead for Big Ben. I actually don't know what to make of this Seattle-Houston game. In Seattle, I could see it where it's 20-13 type of game where it's sort of a slugfest, or I could, maybe see it be much more high scoring. And then I think it's pretty hard to imagine the Steelers and Lions game isn't relatively high scoring inside that dome, in Detroit. So I would probably lean towards Big Ben, despite the fact that he's on the road.
Looking at the schedule now, I will say that he's had a pretty tough schedule so far, and it does get a lot lighter going forward. So I'll redact my out completely. I'm now at 100% out. I'm down to like 80% out, but I'll give him a chance to work against those bad defenses. But honestly, he hasn't looked that good in the games that I've seen him. It just seems to be missing throws and all that, and it doesn't always seem to be, the defense shutting him down. Sometimes he's just making mistakes. So, he's starting to get towards the end of his career. He's definitely a guy that's, gets a little dramatic at times when things start going wrong and gets inside his own head. But no, I mean, you're right that the schedule does get a lot easier for him going forward. So, he's worth a stream if you're missing a quarterback and you gotta get a guy in there who could get you a big week. But frankly, he really hasn't had any big weeks yet. I mean, only one game over 300 yards and never more than 2 touchdowns. This is not the Big Ben, the prototypical Big Ben we are used to in years past. I could say that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure if it's rough start, rough schedule, what it is, but I think there's clear skies on the horizon for him. So I think that's the way I would go. And can we talk about real quick? Can we talk about Josh McCown? Can we talk about where in the hell has this man come from? Like just came right from the grave and has just been smashing the last 2-3 weeks. Has been a top 15 quarterback in fantasy 4 of his last 6 weeks. Has been a top 5 the last 2 weeks in a row. I mean, Josh McCown, everybody, just out here lighting the world on fire.
He kind of does this, doesn't he? He always goes to a different team, I feel like, every season, and then he finds a way to start games, and then he just starts balling out. But, he's a fragile quarterback. He gets injured a lot, and he's been playing for a long time now. He's getting close to that ripe old age of 40. But, yeah, he definitely can get it done. And this Jets team that, going to the season, everyone was like, oh, they're tanking. They want, Sam Darnold. They're going for the first pick overall. And it turns out that they're so bad that they actually don't even tank well because they're winning games. And, honestly, the options there are not terrible. I mean, Austin Jenkins is a talented guy. Jermaine Kearse has been pretty good for them. Robbie Anderson he's a okay receiver, but he's fast, so he makes up for his downfalls with that. But yeah, McCown has looked really good. You like seeing his attempts aren't crazy. He's usually in the 30-ish range, but his completion percentage is like 70. I mean, he's just making everything work, and then he's allowing his receivers to make yards after the catch. So, if that's the game plan that's been working for him, yeah, they're going to keep doing it. You do have, the interceptions are there. Josh McCown is not and has not been a franchise quarterback at any part of his career, really. He kind of had an opportunity for Arizona when he first started, but it didn't turn into much. And that's for a reason, is that he's still a mediocre QB, but this team's been moving the ball fairly well. He's got some talented pass catching running backs. So that, you're getting yards there as well. And I like him. I think he's going to be a good play this week. Now, he's played 4 games against the Falcons in his career, and his averages are not so hot. 139 yards, a half a TD, and 0.8 interceptions is the average he has against the Falcons. I don't think that's particularly telling, probably because he's also jumped in as taken over for an injured starter. So I wouldn't look into that too much. But I think he's a good play this week. Probably 300 plus yards is definitely within the realm of possibility. And I like that. That's a good call, Kev.
On Josh McCown, I think a lot of the way he's been playing has been matchup. They've played the Browns, Patriots, and Dolphins defenses the last 3 weeks, which we know those are all terrible. Even the Dolphins now are terrible, getting blown out by the combination of Joe Flacco and Ryan Mallett. A lot of it's the offense holding the Dolphins defense back. I think. But so I think some of it is matchup there with Josh McCown, and his schedule does actually stiffens a little bit over the next few weeks. McCown's got Atlanta this week, obviously, but then Buffalo, going to Tampa Bay, which is actually a nice matchup, but then a bye, Carolina. And the thing with me for Josh McCown is that, like Ken was talking about, he gets injured a lot. These in 2016 played 5 games, 2015 8 games, 2014 he played 11, which was nice, but then 2013 8 games, and then 2011 the year before that he wasn't a starter. That was when he took over for Jay Cutler, and had 3 good games that got him nice contracts since then. So I think a little bit of it is the weapons, a little bit of it has been the matchups, and I think a little bit of it has been Josh McCown has been weirdly healthy this season, but I don't think that's going to last. I think these matchups are going to stiffen up. But a gross thing right now, Josh McCown is the QB 13. So
wow,
there's been some injuries at the quarterback position this year, but I mean, you got to give him credit for what he has done. But I don't think it's going to last. I still think he's an okay start this week. But I think if he's your only quarterback, I don't think that's wise. I think you definitely need a backup plan, because I think it's going to dip very fast.
Good call. Yeah, go ahead, Kev.
I mean, you're never picking up Josh McCown with the thought that like this is some league-winning quarterback. Like it's more of a week-to-week thing.
Well, no.
I don't.
No. I just know that we cast a wide net. We got to cast a wide net.
No,
I know there are some people
got hurt. My season's over.
But just to update something from earlier, I did just a little bit of math while we were talking here. If you had started the number 1 tight end against the Browns every single week, you would have the tight end 2 right behind Zach Ertz with 102 PPR points.
Wow.
That's how bad the Browns are.
That's really crazy.
And a lot of those guys have been streamable. Tyler Croft, ASJ, you could have picked him up earlier in the season. Jack Doyle, even though he did have the only bad game against them. But, yeah, a lot of these guys have been streamable. So,
actually, I'm glad you brought up ASJ, and I know we were just talking about him. I have a quick lineup question for you guys. I have Jimmy Graham and Austin Seferian-Jenkins this week. Which tight end should I start? This is a standard league. Yes, those still exist.
You can't start both?
I could start both. I currently have Amir Abdullah in the flex.
Oh, yeah, definitely. 100%. I'd start the tight end.
Start both of them?
Yeah. I don't know how you can't. Amir Abdullah has been so hit and miss, and the Steelers are strong. I don't know. It seems like but I mean, the only positive is that, for the Steelers, their one weakness is against the run. But I don't know. I just don't know if game flow is going to allow for Amir Abdullah to see the touches. And I just love the tight ends this week. I'm starting 2 tight ends everywhere I can, just because I think there's so many good matchups this week for tight ends. So, I mean, Jimmy Graham, I think, is in a top 5 spot, and obviously ASJ is the only player that the Jets have that you can remotely count on a week-to-week basis. Mm-hmm. And despite the fact that he's not seeing massive yardage numbers, but he is seeing touchdowns. So
yeah, you gotta like that red zone usage there for ASJ. I currently had Jimmy Graham slotted in, but I am open to putting ASJ over Abdullah. That does sound like an interesting plan.
I do agree with Kev there to start. I would start both of those tight ends over Abdullah. But for what it's worth, the only tight ends that have had more than 50 yards against the Texans have been Travis Kelce and Gronkowski. So I think Jimmy Graham's in that tier, but there is a chance that Graham doesn't have the best game this week.
Well, you have to remember, I think there's a lot of things to factor in here that, I think we're going to continue to see the loss of all the defensive pieces that the Texans have lost. They're going to play a bigger role. I actually think the Texans defense is going to end up it's going to be a defense that we want to end up targeting by the end of the year. where we feel fantastic about playing guys against the Texans because they're going to be really struggle to get a pass rush. We obviously know the Seahawks, offensive line is poor, but I just don't know who they're going to be able to rush the passer with. I mean, with no Watt, no Merciless, Brian Cushing's out for is still out. So they basically have Jadeveon Clowney, and that's it. And I think that's going to end up being a problem. And if you allow that kind of time for Russell Wilson, he is going to pick you apart. And I just think this is a great matchup for Jimmy Graham this week and Doug Baldwin.
Yeah, I like everything you said about the Texas defense. I think that's all true, and we talked about it a little bit earlier. But yeah, I do like guys like Paul Richardson and Tyler Lockett this week a little bit too. If you need a flex, just because, like you said, I do think Wilson will have more time than he typically has, just because their pass rush has been not great. Obviously losing two of the best players on their team in Watt and Merciless. So I like I said, I still think I would start Graham over Abdullah, but I would start ASJ over Graham. But it is close. I don't think it's scary. The matchup is scary or anything. I just do think it's worth mentioning.
All right, well, let's move on to another question we have in from Jim. We're talking about a different league now for him, but it is PPR once again. He needs 2 wide receivers and a flex position, so a total of 3 guys. The options here are Doug Baldwin, Amari Cooper, Chris Hogan, Marvin Jones, Tevin Coleman, in for the flex possibility, and Danny Amendola. So we need 3 total guys, 2 wide receivers and a flex, PPR. What do you think, guys?
For me, it's those first 3. I think Cooper and Crabtree could both have good games this week. The only semi-decent, I don't want to say that. Tre'Davious White has played pretty good for a rookie, but EJ Gaines is not going to play today for the Bills, so that dings their secondary a little bit. I think the Raiders have been playing very well the last week and a quarter-ish. So I like the Raiders' offense this week against the Bills. The Bucs had success against them last week. And then Baldwin, we talked about liking Baldwin against the Texans this week. That's a good play. The other guys, for me, I'm still starting Chris Hogan over any of those guys. I just think this Chargers game is going to be a decent shootout. I do think Hogan could maybe see a lot of Casey Hayward, but they do like to move him into the slot a lot, so he could end up on Brandon Cooks for a lot of that game too. But that leans me towards liking Amendola a little bit also, because they use him certainly in the slot, and the Chargers have not been able to cover the slot this year. So I like those, definitely starting at least one of those Patriots guys. But for me, it would be the Hogan, Hogan, Baldwin, and Cooper. Tevin Coleman, I don't know that you can trust this offense very much without Kyle Shanahan in it. It's looking worse week after week, not better. They struggled against the Patriots defense, who everyone and their dog has been able to perform well against. So Tevin Coleman had, I think, one catch or 1 target last week or something like that, which is that's scary to me, because you usually like him to be able to catch passes, and the Jets defense does not scare you in that regard at all. The Steelers have been good against quarterbacks and wide receivers. Their defense is playing better week after week. So I think Marvin Jones is an all right play this week, but I don't like him above any of those guys. So for me, it would be those first 3, but I don't like Kevin Coleman this week.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I take Hogan over Amendola. I know you kind of said that either of those guys would be a pick, and it is PPR. I know a lot of people think that Amendola would have more PPR value over Hogan, but Hogan is actually averaging more targets per game. It's only 6.7 versus 6 in Hogan's favor, but he's actually getting more targets than Danny Amendola is. He's getting the receptions, and you like the touchdown potential for him as well. So I don't think the PPR really splits me towards Amendola all that much. I still like Hogan. He's the best receiver on that team right now, outside of Gronk. I think definitely best wide receiver. But and yeah, I think it's a lock. I think Cooper's back. I know we talked about it in the beginning of the season. Buy low, buy low, buy low, because Cooper is coming back, and now he's back and he's ready to start going off. They're going to force feed him the ball, make sure he gets going, shake off those drops, and he'll be okay. And then, like we've already gone over it, Doug Baldwin is a lock for me as well. So, Kevin, thoughts?
This is I think the first two are pretty simple for me. I think it's easy. Doug Baldwin and Chris Hogan, I think, are really, really easy calls. But I don't see how you can sit Amari Cooper either. Although I think some of what happened last week is a little bit, I don't want to get caught in, recency bias on what just happened, against the Chiefs, because the Bills defense, it has played solid all season. And so I know that Derek Carr tends to struggle against really good defenses. So I still think you have to go Amari Cooper, but I do certainly have some interest in Tevin Coleman, who I think is being sort of undervalued this week and has continued this year to have standalone value. And I think if this game, I think Tevin Coleman against the Jets could end up seeing, more touches than maybe normal. And he actually plays better on the road than he does on the home, and it's kind of the reverse. It's kind of reverse splits, and the same thing goes for Devonta Freeman. Actually plays much better at home than he does on the road. So I like Tevin Coleman this week as sort of a sneaky option, but I don't think I could sit him against Amari Cooper. So Baldwin, Cooper, and Hogan.
Yep. It seems pretty unanimous then across all of us there. So those are your guys you should be starting this week, according to us. So let's go on to a question from Cody. Cody is here from the TFA crew. So what's up, Cody? He is looking for upside. So let's keep this upside relevant in a 0.5 PPR league. So he's looking at Doxson or Crowder. I think there's a clear answer here. At least in my opinion. And I think it's Doxson. I think he's now taken over the role from Pryor. Pryor took his opportunity there with the Redskins and squandered it. I'm really not happy because I definitely drafted Pryor in a few spots. And Doxson is now the new, I would say, the top wide receiver. Jordan Reed's still a part of this offense, but Doxson is going to leap up to the lead wide receiver status on his team pretty quickly. He's talented. He's had a little injury, history, but I think he's now kind of getting past that and looks to expand his role in the offense, build a rapport with Kirk Cousins. And yeah, Crowder has kind of been relegated to specific situations, short yardage scenarios. He's not getting the targets he got last year. He's not being used in the red zone like he was last year. I think it's Doxson by a pretty hefty margin. Guys?
I think it's tougher than what it should be. I just don't know. Like, I like Doxson a lot, but it scares me because just as quickly as we saw him see it, out snap Terrell Pryor, I could easily see it go back the other direction. But I do think that that Josh Doxson possesses the highest upside of the two. Obviously, especially as a red zone option as well for Kirk Cousins. So, in a game that I feel like could be the highest scoring of the week, although everybody's worried about the weather, but I could care less about the weather. So, yeah, I think it's Doxson.
Yeah, for me, it is actually close for me as well. But I do lean if you were asking for somebody to start, I like you said, Kev. I think Terrell Pryor maybe not turn it around, but I do think he could still has the potential to outsnap Doxson. I don't know that he's just completely ready to get written off. But upside, yeah, I do think Josh Doxson has the most upside there. If you're talking about pass catchers, Obviously, you're starting Jordan Reed this week. The Cowboys have not been good against covering the tight end by any means. And I think Vernon Davis has more upside than both of those guys this week, just because of how much they involve him in the offense and how good this matchup is for him. So I know that wasn't the question, but I know that's not a game we've talked very much about today. I like Kirk Cousins a lot in that game too against a bad Cowboy secondary. But for me, yeah, the upside would be Doxson, but I do think it is closer just because I'm not ready to say that Jamison Crowder is done. He certainly has not had a good game yet this season, but we saw what he was able to do last year, with a good amount of targets. He just hasn't seen those targets. Kirk Cousins does such a good job of spreading the ball around to so many different guys that without the volume, I don't know that Crowder has the same upside that he did last season.
All right, well, that's a couple of good answers there, talking about upside between those two Redskins receivers. We do have a final score update on the Minnesota Viking game. They have defeated the Cleveland Browns 33-16. Maybe we can just chat for a little bit about the usage of Diggs coming back off that injury. I know we also do love Adam Thielen a lot, and he had a very, very good outing there for the Vikings. I will pull up his stats here in a second, but a little disappointing to see Diggs only get 4 receptions for 27 yards. A lot of people have high hopes for him because he came out explosive in the beginning of this year. And then Thielen went 5 for 98 yards and a touchdown today. So he had a fantastic outing for you if you started him. Guys, do you think that this is going to kind of be a back and forth wide receiving core, or is Diggs just taking it easy coming off the injury?
I think it's them just we're taking it easy on him. I mean, he looked fine out there in the game. Watching the game, seeing Diggs, I think he looked fine. I think this is more. I wouldn't put this as a sign of things to come. I think they wanted to, knowing they're playing the Browns, ease him back into the field. There was a lot of times he wasn't even on the field. So I'm not worried about Stephon Diggs, and I'm happy. I love him moving forward. And again, another guy that I would look to buy low.
For me, yeah, it's the same. If you can buy low on Diggs, I would try to, just because they do have the bye coming up. And yeah, I think it's exactly what you said, Kevin. They were limiting his snaps against the Browns. They knew, at least by the time the second half rolled around, they knew they did not need Diggs, and they were going to win the game. And yeah, with soft tissue injuries, the groin that he's been dealing with, he's dealt with it in the past as well. They don't want the chance of losing him for more weeks. So I think, yeah, against the bye, it just makes sense to put him out there for a little bit, see how he does, but don't overwork him. Don't make him run too many routes, that kind of thing. Of this game, though, just a quick shout out to Kai Forbath, fellow Kai, representing averaged 15 points as a kicker over the last 4 weeks. So if you need a kicker, I know nobody likes kickers, but if somebody has been using him and drops him over the bye, maybe not this week, but the week after, sneaky pickup for your kicker, Kai Forbath. Shout-outs to the Kais out there.
Look, I don't have the stats in front of me to support this theory, but is it just me, or do kickers seem to have quite the outing? Well, unless you play for the Browns, when they play in London. I feel like in London games there's always like 10 total field goal attempts between two teams. I don't know what it is, but there's always kickers. There's always kickers going off in London, I feel like.
I don't know, maybe good red zone defense play or bad red zone offense play in London. I don't know. I feel like it was that way last year as well in that that overtime game that ended in a tie between Cincinnati and Washington. There was a lot of field goals. I don't know. There could be something to that, Kent. I will do some research and get back to you, because kickers are people. While they are not football players, they are people.
They are people. That is correct. I should not have said that earlier. I was using the slander of some other people. That was not my thoughts on the matter. All right, well, we are getting close to that kickoff for your noon games here this week. Well, noon for my time anyway. The mid-day games anyway. So get those final roster decisions locked in here pretty quickly. Make sure you got your right guys on your roster. Ensure that your flex spot is filled with someone who plays as late as possible in case of emergency swaps. Guys, I guess we kind of have just a few more minutes to chat about whatever we want leading up to this week. So if you've got a certain player you are excited about, let's go ahead and do maybe a guy a piece here. Talk about one player you're looking at this week to kind of be maybe a sneaky play. Hopefully less obvious, but you can kind of pick whatever you want. It's nothing major. So Kai, you looking like you might have a guy in your mind here?
I do, and there's a couple of games we haven't really talked about much yet. The New Orleans Chicago game, and then the Philadelphia the Philadelphia San Francisco game. And it's going to be one of those players from that game. Marquise Goodwin, a former Longhorn and Olympic athlete, has seen a healthy amount of targets this year. The Eagles secondary has been pretty terrible, and he seems to have a connection with C.J. Beathard. I'm trying to pull it up here, but I think Goodwin had one of his best games of the year last week against the Cowboys, 4 catches for 80 yards. He's had a 60-yard game. He's had a 5-catch for 116-yard game as well. Yet to find the end zone, but I think against the Eagles, the 49ers are certain to be behind for most, if not all, of this game, and desperately looking for something downfield in the form of Marquise Goodwin. I think Pierre Garçon's a fine start this week. I don't think, even though this matchup is a little scary on the ground, I don't think you're ready to sit Carlos Hyde. But I do like Marquise Goodwin a little bit this week. He has been dealing with an injury a little bit since last week, but he is all good. They've cleared him. He's ready to play. So I like Marquise Goodwin as a sneaky play this week.
All right, well, I have a guy, so I'll go ahead and kick that off, and then we'll get to someone that Kevin's thinking about here after that. And my guy is going to be Juju Smith-Schuster. It's his time. It's his opportunity. You know, Martavis Bryant has kind of gone on a social media tirade, and now he's being put in timeout by Tomlin. So you're going to have Martavis Bryant not playing this week, which of course means targets are there to go around. Juju Smith, his name is a bit of a tongue twister. Juju Smith-Schuster has shown that he's been, doing good work with his limited target share that he's had so far this year. But he has a shot here to step up as the number 2 wide receiver on the team. And something that actually might be helping Big Ben in the long run here as these matchups start to soften up for him. The Lions defense is thought of as a pretty good defense because their and special teams has been scoring really well, but they're actually 22nd allowing points to wide receivers this year. So quite a few teams have put up a ringer on them so far. So you're looking at about 33 points across the wide receiver core. I think Juju Smith-Schuster can get a share of that this week. He's going to be, there for touchdown opportunity. That offense obviously runs through Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell. We all know that. It's been that way now for a few years, and those guys get the work done. But if the offense keeps moving, that means more opportunity for all of those involved as well. So definitely could see like an 8 to 10 target game would be nice for Juju this week. We want to see what he can do on an expanded target share. I think he's a good play. It'd be like a desperation play. I don't think I have him starting anywhere yet, but if he does score this week, you start to build that confidence. You think maybe the Steelers go ahead and just move Bryant back to wide receiver 3 on the team. If they don't need him, then they don't need him because Juju is a very talented rookie. He's shown promise, and I think with this target share, he could show us something interesting against the Lions. So that is a guy that I'm watching this week pretty closely. I want to see how he does. But let's move on to Kevin's guy and see what he is thinking.
There's all kinds of guys this week that I really like, but I really like Tyrell Williams. I don't think anybody's talking about him. Everybody's left him for dead against New England. We could, typically years past, New England likes to take away a team's, that's the narrative that they like to take away a team's best option, and I think that could very well be Keenan Allen. I think this is a week that Tyrell Williams gets going, and it should be a much faster paced game, a game where the Chargers are going to have to keep up. And as we know, that the Patriots defense is absolutely decimated by injuries, and they've just played horrible no matter what this year anyway. So I really like Tyrell Williams, a guy that I'm playing a lot of in DFS this week. Tyler Kroft, I think, is in a fantastic spot. Really love me some Tyler Kroft. I've been team Kroft now since Tyler Eifert's went down with the injury there weeks ago. I think Joe Mixon is in a fantastic spot. I think this could be his breakout day. Like I said, we're pretty much just stacking. I may just play an entire roster full of Bengals against the Colts this week. Because
I might too.
But I just think that there's some of these guys are in fantastic spots this week. And then let's see. I could keep going here. There's just so many. I don't know. I love this slate. I think Kirk Cousins is in a fantastic spot this week. I love Jordan Reed. Jordan Reed on DraftKings is 4,700. That is an absolute steal.
That's absurd. That's so cheap.
His price did not change because they played the Monday night game. So his price was already locked in for this week's slate. So I'm playing a lot of Kirk Cousins, Josh Doctson, Jordan Reed stacks. I want nothing to do with Terrell Pryor at this point, at least for this week. I think Carson Wentz is in a fantastic spot. So I can just keep going here. We can just.
Has there been a bigger non-injury disappointment than Terrell Pryor this year?
Martavis Bryant.
Well, that's a good one.
At least for me, just because I wasn't that high on Pryor.
But
yeah, I wasn't high on Pryor coming in this season, but I was high on Martavis Bryant. And for all the people saying, "Oh yeah, we knew he was a bust," and we knew he, no, you didn't. You thought that he was going to get suspended again. That was the only reason pre-draft to not draft Martavis Bryant.
I still don't know if you can call him
at least the 7th round.
I still don't know if I'm saying he's a bust. To this point, he has been.
You might not be, but yeah, to this point, for sure.
The Steelers have not. It's not like the Steelers are out here. Big Ben's dropping 350-yard, 4-touchdown-a-week games, and Martavis Bryant isn't involved, and he's just terrible this year. That's not really how it's gone. So I think some of it's a little overblown. Now, some of it's also Martavis Bryant being a drama queen, but that's what every wide receiver does. That's just what we've come to expect from the position. So while some of it I think is overblown on that, I do think and maybe the Steelers will trade him, and that would be fantastic. Can we trade him to if we can play armchair GM? Can we get him to the Falcons? Because I think that would just be fantastic for Matty Ice.
Oh, that would be great.
Could you imagine
that they would be
on the outside?
I don't know that Sark would be able to use him right.
No, they need to fire him. He needs to go. Let's go ahead.
Absolutely.
I call a better game plan on Madden than that guy does.
We'll just have you choose all the plays as you're playing a Madden game, and then you can be the new offensive coordinator for him. I've heard whispers of the Bills actually being a possible spot for that. I think that's a little bit intriguing. Their receiving options there just aren't really all that great, and they've lost Charles Clay. So
for me, I don't know that that's going to happen, just because I think if they were willing to make a move like that, I think they would have held on to Sammy Watkins. But I don't know. I think they didn't expect their team to be this good. For some reason, everyone in the league likes Tyrod Taylor except the Buffalo Bills front office. That's it. Everyone else likes Tyrod Taylor as a top 15 to 18-ish quarterback in the league, and that he, you can win plenty of games with him, except the Bills. It does not compute. It doesn't make it. It makes about as much sense as what Steve Sarkisian does with the Falcons offense. That's the level of sense that it makes to me.
Well, I think that I don't know. I will say, because I know we didn't really talk about it, the Marcel Darius trade from the Bills. Like I actually think it could be a good trade for the Bills because one, like that contract's massive, and he hasn't played very well this year. And
no,
so
he's been looking worse season after season.
If they get hit, if he's not the guy that anymore that he looked like before, now maybe he was not motivated or not interested or whatever the case may be, but to get out from under that contract for them and a team that's clearly rebuilding that has no need to have a player that's getting paid that much money, I think it could actually be a very smart move for them getting out from under that contract, and it would just be a very Jacksonville thing if he ends up just being just like Ndamukong Suh, where you're paying this guy all this money and he's just because who needs a quarterback when you have a defense that can just wreck worlds?
Yeah, no kidding. Just strong D and run the ball, and that's all you really got to do. Well, anyway, Jim brought up a good guy. Eddie Lacy was a pretty big bust. In fact, every running back in Seattle has just been awful. It's early in the season, you were like, oh, this guy's starting. No, this guy's starting. And they just kept cycling through, and now it's just a full-blown running back by committee. Nothing good going on there for fantasy purposes. We also had another guy pop in. Than, I think it is pronounced, popped in to say hi. He has no questions because he has a lot of bye week issues. So it sounds like his lineups have been forced into place, and that happens to the best of us. These bye weeks can get quite cumbersome trying to work around them. But wish you guys the best of luck this week. Thanks again, Jim, for stopping by and the questions. We are getting close to kickoff here. Guys, go ahead and give a quick shout out. Let everyone know where they can find you real quick once again, and we'll start closing up the show.
I mean, I don't really need the help. I've got enough. Oh, that's funny. No, you can find just follow me. All I do now is podcast. I'm just a podcast whore now. So TFA podcast with Kent.
Yep, that's right. You talked to me into joining you guys, so I'm part of that gig now.
Yeah, so big time. And then the DFS DJ Nation pod with Elliot Chris and Ryan Williams. It hasn't been the same not having Ryan around the last week because I feel like I have nobody to battle with, So
there's not enough animosity on the show.
I told him I walked in as the mediator of that show. Like, oh, you're kind of right, and you're kind of right too. It's like Kevin doesn't like that. Kevin wants me to fight, but I'm from Minnesota and we don't really do that here. So
yeah, I want
you guys are basically Canadians. You're so nice.
I'm from South Canada. I admit it's true.
So there you go.
It snowed here, guys. We have snow on the ground.
America's hat.
Yeah, absolutely. Kai, go ahead and let everyone know where they can find you at.
Yeah, sure. You can find me always on Twitter at Kai Squared for any sort of fantasy football news. And then I'm usually on this show every Sunday morning. Come back next week just for some banter, or if you actually need help with your lineups, come back. And then this week I was actually did a fun thing. I was on the Dynasty Happy Hour Open Bar podcast, so you can check that out. That was a fun thing. And then you can find Kent's new awesome mustache right there on his face. So check that out as well.
That thing is legendary.
It's pretty beastly, right? I mean,
it is.
Because I had a full-blown beard, right? Anyone who's watched this show before, I did come on with a full beard. And this was actually part of a Halloween costume. So that's why it's the way it is right now. I was a strong man, so I had to go as a big, bushy, old-fashioned 1920s strong man. I had a bald cap and all that, but it was really fun. And then I'm keeping it to play hockey tonight. But anyway, you can find me on Twitter at ccnp_Kent. As Kevin said earlier, I am also now part of the Fantasy Authority podcast. So you can hear that. Usually comes out every Thursday morning, sometimes Wednesday night. But just keep an eye out for that every week and go ahead and give it a listen. We'd love to have you guys let us know how we're doing, subscribe and all that. So it's 12:02. The games are kicking off. I want to thank everyone for coming in. And by the way, Jim mentioned that I have a bitchin' stash. So thank you for the compliment. I appreciate it. I can assure you I will not be doing anything crazy like starring in any like 80s porn or anything like that, because I got a couple comments about the stash in that way last night. So anyway, let's go ahead and close up the show. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming out. Good luck with your fantasy matchups, and we'll catch you next week on the Game Day show. And that is going to be it for us here at the Fantasy Authority. Make sure you get that on your favorites bar for the rest of the season. Check out all of our awesome fantasy content and podcasts. Thank you very much, and good luck.